Hey, welcome back. Today we're looking at a worm bin again. So let me pull off their blanket. Oh, look at that. A couple of worms on the underside of their blanket. Let's brush them off. But I'm seeing a bunch of castings up under the blanket where they crawled up and they left their little garden gold for me. So loved that to see. But I'm also seeing a little bit of fungal activity over here, which I also like to see. Fungal activity is very good to have to introduce to your garden. So it's nice to have various decomposers to break down the material and make it available for your garden plants to have. As always, some of the seeds that I dropped in here from my kitchen scraps are sprouting, so we're just going to throw those to the side to let the worms to eat. And it looks like the castings off on this end are relatively dry, crumbly, and worm-free. So let's go ahead and pull some out so we can put them into the garden. So let's start by that, harvesting some, which is, as a reminder, is kind of the whole point of this system, where I always feed on this side, and that way there's not very much food over here. And so it's easy for me to harvest without losing, there might be a few worms here and there, but I can either just pull them out as I see them go into here, or if I lose a couple of worms, that's really not a big deal. But if I were to harvest, elsewhere in the bin, I would lose, potentially dozens or hundreds of worms out of my bin where I need them and into my garden where, they also do a very good job out in the garden, but I just don't need them quite as badly. Okay, now I'm getting a little bit wetter, down to wetter spots where, there's there is still some food in here. They can go and they can reprocess this a number of times. So really what gets them out of the finished castings is when I sort of stack it up high and let it dry out. So even though they're finished castings without a lot of food, the worms will still go there and hang out. So you can see a couple of worms in here. Once again, not too worried about these. These are mostly very small worms, which don't eat nearly as much as the bigger ones. They probably have a harder time getting back over where the food is anyway, which is probably why they're here. So as always, after I harvest what I need, I'm gonna dig down here and fluff it up. So this is to make it so that it doesn't get too compacted. Yeah, you can see, even though these are the finished section down where it's a little bit wetter, there are the worms. So if you're having any issue, like with getting your worms out of the finished castings, just to make it a little bit easier to harvest, you can always do the strategy where you put it out in the sun and then you slowly just skim the top off as the worms dive deeper to get out of the sun. But also what I do is I just stack it way up so the top dries out, and then I just skim the top off each time I come and check on these guys. And then that makes it easy, which is kind of what I'm going for. I like to get in here, fluff this all up, introduce oxygen to the system, so I get the right type of bacteria breaking stuff down, and see what's going on. Do a health check on all my worms, make sure it's not too moist, too dry. Make sure it's not full of pests or rotting food. Allows me to do all those things the way I check on it like this. But I can also stack it up, the most finished stuff, stack it up high so it dries out and the worms want to leave it. And being a little bit dry, it's unpleasant for the worms, but all the good beneficial bacteria and fungi in there survive just fine. So I can go and the slightly drier stuff. Look at that. That got colonized so good. You love to see that. So let's spread it out here so the fungi can colonize more sections of my worm bin. Just let them spread out. Here's some of the older avocado. Look at that, it's black avocado. Now I'm gonna break it up just to make it a little bit easier for the worms to get at it. So if you have a larger chunk of food in there, look at that. That's where we fed last time. So that's where the real population is. Looking pretty good, but not completely broken down at the same time. Yeah, there they are. Here's the mother load of the worms. Just looking through, checking on them, making sure they're good color. Yeah, they look quite happy, quite healthy. This whole side of the worm bin is a little bit more damp, which is probably why in addition to having food, is one of the other reasons why the worms prefer it a little bit more, which is how I like it. I want them to be over here breaking down the new stuff. Oh yeah, these guys, I fed them a whole bunch of apricots last time. I'm seeing all the apricot pits, but I see almost no flesh. So they went to town on those apricots. It was a gigantic bag, and they are just gone, which maybe explains why I am seeing more of like the avocado and some of the harder stuff to break down, because they were preferring all of those apricots and ignoring these, a little bit tougher to eat food items. So yeah, you will notice if you have like some fruit in there, they will get after that first before they get after, some woodier vegetables. Okay, let's start by adding in new bedding. You always have to add in new bedding, a nice place for them to stay. This is just cardboard and newspaper. We get like the free newspaper every week, so we throw some of that in there, as well as the cardboard from whichever packages come throughout the week. I'm gonna throw in some of the bigger pieces of leftover food in here just so they all stay over on the one side. And then, as always, I add in my coffee grounds. Coffee grounds are great, high in nitrogen, great for fertilizer, and because because I'm crumbling them up here, they're nice, easy, bite-sized snacks for the worms to get at. And even if I maybe eat out a bunch in the previous week and I don't have as many kitchen scraps, I will still be drinking my coffee, and so I always have at least something to give them. So that's a great thing to do. I know some people with some larger worm bins, one of the other things they do is they see if local coffee shops will donate any of the leftover grounds. I have not that big a worm bin and no desire to have a much larger one, so my own ones do the trick. My own coffee grounds do the trick for me. All right, let's add in the eggshells from our eggs from the week. Once again, these are for worms have gizzards like birds, so they need a little bit of aggregate to help break it down. So I'm going to put that in, and then my compost from the week, all of my little kitchen scraps. So here we had a watermelon the other day. It was like a yellow watermelon, very interesting. But we have all the rind. They'll get through that no problem. You might have noticed I put a little bit more of those the bedding than usual. Oh, we don't want that in there. And that's just because I knew I had some watermelon, and watermelon's got water right in it, so I need a little bit of extra stuff to help kind of absorb all that. And it can be nice to mix it in a little bit just so that worms can get at it from every possible angle. If you put in your scraps in one big pile, they won't be able to get to the center of it, and it'll take them a lot longer to break down. It might also heat up more, which during the winter is totally fine, but here it gets a little bit warmer in the summer, so we don't really want any extra heat because it might get too hot. All right, now let's just lay that down a little bit. So we got we harvested out some of our worm castings. We can add that to the garden. We did a health check. Everything looked nice and healthy. No excess food left over, no rotted food, no pests in here. The moisture level looked great. And then we did our feeding. So we added more bedding, our coffee grounds, our eggshells, and our kitchen scraps. Now that we have it all stacked up, you noticed I mixed in some of the older stuff both on the bottom and in the middle and the top just to help seed it with the beneficial bacteria. And then let's lock in the moisture, because I think we have the appropriate moisture level. Let's lock them in. Let's insulate them from pests, flies, any other types of things, and allows them to come up to the top. Also discourages them from climbing around, because we want to keep the moisture in here, not in the bin in hole. So the drier we keep the sides, the less they'll climb up the sides and get themselves into trouble. And we'll check again on 2 weeks. So I will post about this bin again in another 2 weeks. Next week we're doing my other bin.